The brakes have officially been put on Cape referendum, and as someone who studies white identity in post-apartheid South Africa and as an early career academic, I agree with this being put on ice because I think many of these Cape independence organizations reflect a white post-apartheid anxiety rather than legitimate political ambitions. I think generally speaking, when you go and read the manifestos and discourses presented by these groups, it is clear that they are driven by this sort of fear or perceived threat towards white people and towards white minorities, that white cultures are in some way under threat, that white bodies are under threat. I think they position the Cape quite clearly as somehow particularly victimized by the ANC government, and I think logics of victimhood tend to be reflective of this kind of white post-apartheid paranoia. I also think that the desire to preserve isolationist approaches to preserving culture is another example of sort of like a post-apartheid separate development-esque or separate development light kind of policy and approach to dealing with multiculturalism and pluralism in the world. Overwhelmingly, I think when you read these texts, the anxieties emerge from places of white people feeling like they are under threat because colonial history is being challenged, things like the destruction of colonial statues in front of universities, or the fact that people are still allowed to sing Kill the Boer as a protest song. Generally speaking, all of these movements, I think, highlight that there are entanglements between things like race and national identity and culture, that if you want to pay attention to how race continues to operate in South Africa, that paying attention to those entanglements is important. You don't have to say race overtly to imply it. And at the same time, I think they very clearly show that the concepts that these groups have of racialized histories is that they must just be left as history. That if we just close the door, close the chapter on apartheid and colonialism, we can move on. None of them are interested in dealing with inheritances and legacies from colonialism. All of them seek to in some way preserve a racialized status quo where white people are still generally on top culturally, economically, and the like. And in some ways, they're trying to reassert white people being on the top politically as well, because one of the few things that white people have lost post-apartheid is political hegemony, is political control, political power. So I think, generally speaking, paying attention to these kinds of things is important. This is why I think discourse on race still matters, discourse on whiteness, because it's clear that within the sort of global order, not just in South Africa, we've seen it in the United States as well, that there are these attempts to reassert white hegemony, white control, white superiority. We need to be able to name it, to notice how it entangles with other phenomena, and to nip it in the bud, I think, as has been done in South Africa today.